Call this April 14th, 2026 Essex County Board of Supervisors work session to order. April, you do a roll call, please?
Chairman Akers.
Present.
Vice Chairman Gill.
Present.
Supervisor Hale.
Present.
Supervisor Henry.
Here.
Supervisor Magruder.
Present.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, first on our agenda, we have our audit presentation for UHY. Gentlemen?
Stand next to me. There's a one-person stand. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Appreciate you having us here. My name is Jason Ostrowski, Managing Director from UHY, and I have with me Bakari Badiaga. He's the Audit Senior Manager on the audit this year. So here today, finally, to present the June 30, 2025 financial statement audit results. So do you have the ACFR with you?
Love to have a copy of it.
You'd like to have a copy?
Love to.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of it.
Carl, you want to give him your copy? It's a very voluminous document if you haven't had a chance to get
Awesome.
through it. But I'm just going to flip through briefly here. I like to hit the highlights first. So I'm going to start with the audit opinion, which is on page 1. So that's the first page of the document. And again, that's our report on the financial statements. And I start there, happy to report a clean, unmodified opinion that the financial statements are presented materially within, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So that's kind of the highlight piece there, clean audit opinion on the financial statements. And then also in the opinion, it talks about there's an emphasis of a matter on that first paragraph, or on that first page, related to compensated absences. So there was a new governmental accounting standard that was implemented this year, and it was related to compensated absences. Not really a material effect on the financial statements, but was implemented and essentially captured really what is some sick leave that hasn't been recorded as a liability on the government-wide financial statements in previous years. Now that sick leave, which isn't really a payout, but it's sick leave that essentially is being earned and then accrued and used based on your policies in future years. And so that liability is kind of picking up that piece that, so all leave that's been paid out has always been kind of accrued under previous standards, but this new one is picking up essentially sick leave and leave that you earn isn't paid out, but then you use in future years. So minor nuance, but that was a new standard that was implemented this year. And then the next couple pages talk about our responsibilities as the auditors versus management. So always like to highlight that. Our role in the process is the audit of the financial statements and to assure that they're presented fairly and materially in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And of course, management's role in the process is related to the preparation of those financial statements and the internal controls related to the preparation of the financial statements. So I always like to highlight that distinction, and ultimately these are management's financial statements. On page 3, there's required supplementary information. So that required supplementary information includes management's discussion and analysis and some additional schedules in the back that are required by GASB. A lot of them are related to the pension information and the OPEB information, the other post-employment, the healthcare, retiree liability information. And on that required supplementary information, we do not issue an opinion, so I always like to highlight that we don't issue an opinion on that required supplementary information, although we do go through in our audit process, validate that information, tie it to supporting documentation, but as far as being covered by our audit opinion, it's not covered by the audit opinion. And then also included within the financial statements is some supplementary information. And that supplementary information, again, it's an in relation to opinion. So our opinion is a clean in relation to opinion, but we don't issue an opinion directly on that supplementary information. And with that, I'll pause if there's any questions on the financial statements before I go into our governance communications. Hearing none. Okay. And then actually in the back, Kari, you want to do the governance? I'll do the, so because we did the audit under government auditing standards, there's a report on internal control over financial reporting, compliance, and other matters. And included within that report, we did have 2 material weaknesses around financial reporting this year. And then also related to the auditor of public accounts, we perform a whole litany of compliance requirements that are required by the state auditors. And going through those compliance requirements, included within the report, there were also 8, we call them APA, compliance findings. So within that report, it covers any weaknesses in internal controls and any, again, APA findings related to our work around testing those compliance requirements. And the other communication, so I'll put, any questions related to that? If none, I'll throw.
I have one,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman. These material weaknesses that you speak about, is it anything that, and I'm not, as far as, I'm not sure about the differences between governmental guidelines as far as FASB as opposed to regular audit? I mean, can you explain that?
Sure.
And as far as the material weaknesses, do you come back and test for those weaknesses to see if they've been resolved?
Yeah, so the difference between, so there's FASB, which is the Financial Accounting Standards Board, and then there's GASB, which is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So they set the accounting standards. So for any state and local governments in the United States, they are going to comply with GASB, so the Governmental Accounting Standard Board, as far as the disclosures, the way the financial statements are presented. And then there's also audit standards, so AICPA audit standards. So we issue the audit under AICPA audit standards, but in addition to that, and primarily because it's a requirement because of the federal funding and because we audit that federal funding, there's also government auditing standards, which really kind of overlay the AICPA audit standards and duplicate a lot of that. But the reason I said that is because there is one report under government auditing standards that gets issued standard as part of that audit, and that's that report on internal control over financial reporting, compliance, and other matters. So if there was anything material or significant, we would highlight it in that report, and if not, we still issue that report and would just say that we didn't have any material findings. And then because of the APA requirements, we also include any compliance requirements specific to that within that report as well.
Okay, so I understand the difference between the two, but the weaknesses, should we engage you to come back and test for those later?
Yes, so that was your second part, so I didn't get to that. So when we come back as part of next year's audit, we will.
Even before that, maybe an interim report?
Before that, that would be a separate engagement, and.
I understand that.
Yeah,
but-
that's something certainly we
But
could.
material weaknesses are material, so.
Yes,
I would hate to go for another year, and then we have the same issue again 12 months from now, when we could test for it earlier than that.
yes, and included within the report are management responses, but certainly coming back and just looking specific to the material weaknesses. And then, once we get into the audit communications, the governance communications, there's several other recommendations that we identified throughout the audit. So if there was a desire to kind of have those looked at and cleared prior to that, that's certainly something we could discuss with the board and management and figure out if that would make sense, how we would do that. But we're probably going to be starting next year's audit. And part of our audit process for next year is to take all the prior year, either material weaknesses or any of the other recommendations, and we'll look at those, we'll look at what management's response was, and we'll update those as well as part of the subsequent year's audit to see if they've been addressed, incorporate that into our audit planning process. So certainly something we'll be looking at in the coming months here as far as when we get into our planning for the fiscal year 2026 audit.
Well, that's something we can discuss as a board, but I just bring that up. I hate for these material weaknesses to stay in that report, and we don't test for them.
Yeah, and also included within there were 2 last year. And kind of to your point, those we looked at during this year's audit, and both of those material weaknesses from last year's report were corrected. So that's also that's the last page of the 157 pages of the report. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bakari, and he's going to go through the audit communications, which is our required governance communications.
All right, thank you again. My name is Bakari Bajaga. So in terms of the governance letter, so at the conclusion of the audit, part of the requirement is really like, come in front of the governance or, in some sort of form, like letter, kind of explain how the audit really went. So if you look at this report here, compared to the financial statement, so the financial statement, in terms of the audit report, so we have the numbers in there, we have the MD&A, we have our audit opinion, but this one is really for those charged with governance. So we kind of have to explain, kind of give a report, sort of a result, how the audit went. How did everything go in terms of plan, interaction management, so how did that, what transpired during the audit. So the first thing that I would like to highlight, I think Jason already highlighted that one, so it's really like, what standards did we really like, follow in terms of conducting the audit? So the first one is really generally accepted auditing standards, so we are required as auditors to comply with certain standards when we are conducting the audit. And, a second standard is really government auditing standards, so we have to comply with government auditing standard as well, so when we're doing audit. And number three is also, audit of, public account of Virginia, so there are some standards that we have to comply with as well when we're conducting the audit. The first item that I would like to go through is really the qualitative aspect of accounting practices. So as part of the audit, so we have to look at how management is selecting accounting practices, like what sort of accounting practices, accounting policies they have in place. We have to evaluate those to make sure that there are no issues. So as part of that evaluation, we've concluded that the financial statement disclosure are neutral, consistent, and clear, so there were no issues from that standpoint. And another item is really like, explaining if there were any difficulties performing the audit. And we are happy to report that we didn't encounter any difficulties performing the financial statement audit for, FY 2025. So the next item is corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So that, it's really like if we found any issues, if we propose any sort of adjustments as part of the audit. So there were a couple of adjustments that, we had to propose as part of the audit, and those were all corrected by management. And next, if there were any disagreement with management, we are happy to report that there were no disagreement with management. So the audit went smooth, so there were no issues in terms of like dealing with management. So they were very cooperative and responsive in terms of items that we've requested. And as part of the audit, at the conclusion of the audit, so we have to request some sort of representation from management. And as part of that, so we've sent a letter to management that we call management representation letter. So it includes a lot of different items and representation that management has to make in terms of the audit. And so those were provided and signed as well. The next item is management consultations with other independent accountants. So there were no other involvement as far as like independent accountants in terms of the application of accounting policies. So there was none. And so after that, so there were other audit findings and issues. So in terms of that, so we encountered some audit delays. I think everyone is aware of those. The audit was due by December 15th, but there were some issues in getting the audit completed timely, and that was due. Part of it was really turnover, and also there were some implementation of joint services where there was going to be like one body that would, take care of the schools, accounting and the county accounting as well. So there were some issues implementing those. So that creates some additional delays for us in completing the audit. I think there's nothing else. Thank you.
Yeah, and then yeah, and if I could just add, also included within that communication, there's also some other comments. So I think we had about 14, and there were 4 separate ones also for the schools, and some of the 14 for the county kind of crossed over and had to do with the joint administration and that transition. So not going to belabor that and go through them all, but certainly all good recommendations. Management's reviewed them, provided responses, and I know that they're diligently working on addressing those. And again, to the earlier question, those are items that we will also follow up with in the subsequent year. And then, yeah, to just kind of conclude, certainly appreciate everything. I know it's March, and as Bakari had mentioned, we're delayed in getting done, but we kind of started out working with Bobby, and then worked with Nita, and appreciate everything from April, and Nita really helped us bring this home, and appreciate everything from management. And I know, with the transition to a new auditor, it's always a challenge to start, and with some of the changes that have been made with the county and joint administrations and the schools, I think all of that kind of came together to really cause those delays. And certainly, as we start planning here in a few weeks, because we'll start kicking off the 2026 audit shortly, certainly looking forward to next year being a much smoother process and issuing a lot sooner next year. So again, appreciate everything, and I'll open it up to any additional questions from the board.
I know I've had several conversations with you all as we went through this process, and appreciate the thoroughness that you guys put into this, because it was a lot more thorough than what we may have seen in years past. So not surprised that we found some of these things, some that we were aware of, and to your point, I think we as a county have addressed them, and I believe social services has addressed a couple of theirs as well. So yeah, appreciate the work that you guys have done. Board members, any particular questions? John?
Not questions, but some comments. First of all, thank you, Mary, thank you, Nita, and our centralized services for all the work that they put into this. They really do an outstanding job. Need a round of applause, something that this is a lot of work.
And thank you, Mary. So I apologize, Mary. I don't want to leave you out. She's critical. And
I know she doesn't like the attention, but I'm sorry. She does an outstanding job, and as well as the rest of the staff that helped you get this accomplished. And I just need to say that I appreciate it, and I know the rest of the board does as well. I guess my biggest concern is now that the school finances are going back to the school. Some of the material findings was their annual school report was not sent in on time, and it wasn't accurate and all that, and that seems to be an issue. I'm not sure if this is more of a internal rather than the auditors, but, a tracking system or something so that gets done on time. I don't want to see the taxpayers here dinged again for any kind of penalties for these being late or whatever. So I'm not sure if that's something that our auditor will meet with them and establish corrective actions, or how's that going to work?
We will certainly include them as part of our planning process. Yeah, we can't do it. We're just going to audit it, so we would report on the compliance with it. But certainly, we will be monitoring it and reminding as well. But ideally, we're not the part of that control process. But yeah,
I know where the responsibility lies.
Part of our
not upset at you guys at all.
Definitely. And so part of our planning is, as I mentioned, going through these, and then with that will be a change, sending it back over how we operated this year. So it'll be certainly, we came in with it being joint, so kind of understanding, and part of our kickoff meeting in any audit is understanding the communications and who our point is, and kind of establishing all of that. So certainly, I don't know what that's going to look like next year, but it will be different, and I would assume have some direct contacts
With the
with
school?
the schools as well, versus this year, we kind of worked through Bobby initially and Nita. And so, again, all of that will be reviewing these during the planning and risk assessment that we do, and then understanding, you know, where they are and how they're gonna track that and correct it.
Because you cited reconciliation issues, documentation missing, contracts not available, missing,
There were
never
several,
signed.
correct.
Numerous times and all, and again, I'm just overly concerned that without policies and procedures, and I'm glad you guys are on top of it. Again, the ultimate responsibility is with whoever does the financial stuff. But I just wanted to make it known to the board here that I'm very concerned, and I hope that you ask for this stuff real early, because you might need some extra time. It's gonna be an interesting challenge on their part. I hope they're up to it. But it is their responsibility, so I just trying to protect my taxpayers for penalties and things like that. So I just needed to say that. Thank you.
Well, to your point, that's why, excuse me, that's why I asked about the interim testing to come back and maybe check on these weaknesses and maybe check them off, making sure everything is in place, processes are in place, because I hate to wait another 12 months for that to happen. I do thank the staff. I know it's always a rocky process when you switch audit firms, and I look forward to be smoother next year for us and for you. So that's, we'll see how it goes, but thank you.
Thank you guys, appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much, appreciate it.
All right, next we'll have the energy study update. So McClure, Chrissy and team.
Good afternoon and good evening, everybody.
Evening.
Chair Akers, members of the board, April, Max. Okay. Thank you for having us tonight. Tonight, we're here to review the Energy Efficiency and Capital Improvement Program developed in partnership together. I'm going to outline the recommended scope, and we'll walk through what we will be asking for approval on in terms of a project next month so that we can move forward together and improvements together. I have team joining. I have Doug Boswell, our Director of Engineering, and Mike Rukowski, our Director of Development. So please feel free to ask your toughest technical questions tonight. What we'll cover today, quickly on agenda, is what we set out to accomplish starting last fall. We'll give you a review of our progress to date, our recommended scopes, the financial impacts and the positive financial impacts brought with that, and then the additional benefits that come with approval and moving forward on this project, along with any questions and answers that you may have for us. You've seen this before. Our partnership focused on 3 major goals, and using the Energy Savings Performance Contract allows us to tackle all 3 and leverage the wasted utility dollars to help fund some of these improvements for you. Just a quick status check on where we are to date in light of where we've started. Like I said, we started our partnership together in fall of 2025 with doing a school-first energy audit, move forward into what we call the investment grade audit. We have initiated our project construction for phase 1 with the schools. We are here to deliver what we have developed in terms of a final scope selection for you, go over the numbers that go along with those improvements for you today. Ask for your feedback and any questions that you have with the recommended scope selection that we have. And then the hope and intention is next month to come back to you and ask for approval and moving forward so that we can do final design and contract execution, and then move into the final engineering, commissioning, and construction and verification, which is your future measurement and verification, confirming those energy savings grabs year over year. The buildings included under the guise of our investment grade audit are inclusive of all these county administration buildings. We'll talk about all of them with the exception of Poorhouse Park, Firehouse, and Animal Shelter. At this point, we just don't have scopes developed for those buildings just yet, but at any point in time in our partnership, we can help work on those buildings when they are ready. I'm going to turn the mic over to Mike and Doug and let them talk through the building scopes and technical details.
Thanks, Chrissy.
No problem.
Hello, everyone. So as Chrissy mentioned, we've kind of had a couple iterations here to kind of get to this final scope where we are. So what I want to do is I'm going to highlight on a lot of the electrical building items, and then Doug's going to highlight the HVAC specifics. So when we talk about electrical upgrades, there's three main categories for this. First is LED lighting upgrades. It's something that's been starting to take place in the county. As we can see in this room here, you have beautiful new LED flat panel lights. We're looking to go through all the buildings on the previous page, except for those three locations, and upgrade all lighting to LED. It's a quick payback, high energy savings with low cost. So it's one of those items that's really beneficial for the county to undertake. We had auditors out here several months ago doing a detailed walkthrough room by room to get counts, and they were able to, come back and provide us with the information we needed, which allowed us to put this together for you today. Second upgrade that we have a focus on is what we're calling panel board upgrades. So this is all your electrical panel boards in each of the buildings listed here. So it's the county admin building, circuit court, Commonwealth attorney, and the treasurer and commissioner building. That is a couple different things with that. So for the most part, it's going through and replacing existing older obsolete panel boards where breakers you can no longer get parts for, they're not easy to be found. Or manufacturers don't exist. So it's going to be provide new circuit breakers, new panel boards, going through, reallocating where all the different feeds go, and making sure that it's brought up to current code. A little more detail in at the circuit court building, that is more than just replacing panel boards. If you can look at the top right photo there, there's a lot of electrical, we'll call it starters, boards, switches in the central plant area of that building. We're going to completely rework that and make that newer, modern, more efficient, less terminations, less panel boards, and all will be in just a couple easy to locate panel boards in that room for you. In the treasurer and commissioner building, currently that building is fed with 2 electrical services, so you have 2 meters on there. So you're paying a meter fee for that building. Essentially, it is one continuous building. So as part of the electrical upgrades there, we're actually going to combine services, so it will just be 1 meter, which will actually save you a meter fee from the utility company for that. So that's one of the added benefits of doing it in that building, is reducing some of the fees that you're currently paying to Dominion Energy. The last item that we had there was fire alarm upgrades. That's only for 2 buildings. That's for the county administration building here and the circuit court building. So the county administration building here does not have a current existing fire alarm system, so it's to bring a system in place that meets current NFPA code and brings it to where we would like to see it. And then for the circuit court building, there currently is a fire alarm system in there in part of the building, but it's an older system. Same thing there, we look to expand that to the rest of the building and also bring it up to the current NFPA code as well. Any questions on the electrical items?
Surprised you didn't find any glass screw-in or nickels stuck in the panel boards, or for that matter, some Westinghouse material of the 50s or 40s, but continue.
Second item that I have here, it's what we call building envelope upgrades. And the main purpose of this is we're trying to keep these buildings airtight. We're trying to air seal them up together. So some main culprits of this that you'll see are cracks, crevices in the exoskeleton of the building. Around doors is a big one. If you look at weather stripping around doors, sometimes you can peer through and you can see daylight through the cracks in the doors. What happens there is you have air that's outside coming into the building without being treated. We like to see all air come in through the HVAC systems. That way it can be treated properly before it comes into the buildings. Anytime you have air coming in unwanted, it's creating additional work for the HVAC system, causing more energy to be used. So by sealing up the building, it helps reduce the amount of infiltration and helps reduce your energy savings. Other areas that we'll look for are areas where, like, the roof line and the walls meet together a lot of times, depending on how general construction is done when the buildings are built. There's a lot of gaps and cracks in there. And all those areas, like I said, our goal is to go through and we are going to air seal up the buildings tight. Some other added benefits we hear of at times is if there was maybe some bugs getting into the building. We've seen where some schools have told us, like, hey, there's bees coming in. Next thing you know, we go through and they say, hey, guess what? Our bee problem went away. We're sealing things up. Things can't get in. Any questions on the building envelope upgrades? And again, this will take place in all the buildings except for the pool. So over at the pool, all you really have is a locker room set up over there. It's not a lot of conditioned space, so when there's not much conditioned space, there's not much benefit for doing the air sealing there.
When you're doing your ceiling and stuff, what are you talking about lifespan? When does that need to be rechecked or redone?
So we're using high-quality components for a lot of the gaps, cracks, crevices. I'm saying outside the door, so I'm talking like anything we find in the exoskeleton, the walls, roof wall. It's a special polyurethane foam seal that goes in, and it should not need touched at all for the life, unless you have maybe a critter goes up there and starts trying to eat it or eat a hole in it. But no, that will last. It should last for the life of the building. Door seals around like doors, that's one of those things that as long as someone's not coming whacking through the hammer or something as they come through the door and beating on it, they have a very long life. I mean, our projects are meant to have a 20-year energy savings guarantee to them.
That's what
They are expected to last at least at minimum 20 years.
That's what I need. Thank you.
All right, from here, I'm going to pass on to Doug to talk a little more on the HVAC items.
Hi, everyone. I'm Doug. So as Chrissy mentioned, we looked at mechanical systems across all the buildings, and we kind of narrowed our focus to the circuit court and the district court based on age of equipment, the usage of the building, and really the needs that we found there. In terms of the circuit court, the system's mostly from 2002 and older, so it's at the end of its life. Right now it has a chiller, which is the picture on the left there in the green, with a small cooling tower, and then also has a boiler system as well. One of the issues with the building itself is it's a changeover system, so you either have heating or cooling throughout the whole building, which is not a huge issue when it's January and it's always in heating mode or always in cooling mode in the summer, but this time of year is really when it struggles because you can't really switch back and forth very well with that type of system. It's just not what it's designed for. And it's especially tricky in a building like that where you have a occupied floor of the building, the basement, that's partially underground, so it's always kind of has limited cooling requirements. So with that, we're proposing a replacement of the system with a VRF system, or variable refrigerant flow. So that what that will do is allow simultaneous heating and cooling throughout the building. That's basically a larger system than what you have here. So it'd be this only has a couple of cassettes. This would be basically a larger version of that, but would also have a ventilation component as well. So we would capture the exhaust air, run it through an energy recovery ventilator, and treat and provide OA pre-treated from that air. So that'll go throughout the basement and first floors. Additionally, the courtroom itself has an older unit, an older split system that serves that space that's ducted from below. So that unit is also in need of replacement, so we would recommend replacing that with a newer version of basically a similar system, but it would go with a heat pump system. Right now it's a typical split system with 2 circuits, and the condensing units are actually located in a pit like right on the other side of that building, so water dumps in that pit. It makes it very hard to maintain. I'm actually kind of amazed that it's lasted as long as it has, given all the water and leaves that collect there.
Takes a licking, but it keeps on ticking.
It's actually kind of amazing. So this kind of gives you just kind of an overview of kind of what the system will look like a little bit. So that's the basement, little cut on the left, and then on the right is a little bit of the first floor. So we will have a condensing unit. We don't recommend going back in the pit, so we're going to relocate it to the other side of the building. We'll provide some sort of shrub screening that will work with you in terms of what level of screening you require. It should be pretty out of the way, so I don't think it should be too much of an eyesore. But we plan on carrying a contingency to work with you. That's a known contingency by the owner that will work with you in terms of how we want to handle it best in terms of what level of screening is required.
What happens with the one that is in the pit out there? Do you guys take care of the removal of that? And does that get filled in, or is that up to us? Or
Our plan is to remove it and then basically keep the grading as is. If you wanted, we could close it in, but yeah, we basically seal off that opening to the building There's also there's an adjacent pit as well that actually is an exhaust path for the cooling tower, and similarly, so we would seal off those exit points of the building. So this will provide cooling and heating throughout the building, and as well as new ventilation air. All the boiler system, the chiller system, all of that would be removed.
With the VRF system, are you gonna be able to use the current ductwork, or are you gonna have to break walls, get into that, and redo things? How's that gonna go?
So we will remove the equipment that's there now. So all of the mechanical room will basically
Right.
it'll be pretty open because there won't be nearly the piping level. All the piping will now be overhead. There's very limited ductwork in the building as is. Most of it's just a hydronic system. So we will have to cut some walls here or there. But we're putting a system is also more of a refrigerant-based system and not a ducted system. So it should have limited impact.
That's what I'm looking for, not to disrupt their services during, for the community and all that. And how about filtration systems? I know with COVID and all that, there was talk about using UV systems. Is there anything talk of that to put into this system or not?
We don't currently have that budgeted in, but that's certainly something that we could look at. It would be an easy installation in terms of adding UV or bipolar ionization or different options. We could give you those options.
Something to consider.
Yeah,
Whether we do it or not, it's a different story, but something to consider if you don't mind.
okay. Yeah, we can certainly do that.
I have a question. How do you calculate the capacity for what it really needs a VR? You don't want it to be running at maximum capacity, I don't think, right? So do you allow some cushion in those calculations? If that makes sense?
Yeah, so you certainly design for, max conditions, so we have to consider, on a peak day, it's, 95 degrees here, so that's, we certainly consider that. The beauty of a system like this, it allows for pretty good turn down. That's the difference between a system today and a system 30 years ago, is that you had kind of get what you get 30 years ago.
Right.
Now you have a lot better variable speed capabilities, so there's much better turn down.
So we're okay on the hottest day and the coldest day?
That is the hope, yeah. Yeah, that's the goal. Any other questions? Continuing on, so the other building that we really focused on was the District Court Sheriff's Office. So that is a system that was installed from 1995. A little bit different from the Circuit Court. That is a ducted system, but that system's in pretty good shape as is. So we looked at the ductwork, we looked at the insulation above the ceiling. That all appears to be in pretty good shape. So really what we recommend is kind of just a modernization of that building. So right there you can see those are the two prime condensing units that serve the building. So we'd recommend basically replacing them in kind with newer systems, which will have better turn down, so better variation throughout the building. And then on the other side of that wall are two large air handling units that serve the rest of the building. So we'd replace them as well. And the downstream VAV boxes are variable air volume, which allows for individual temperature control throughout the space. So that system would be replaced throughout, so that would all be new. And then going along with that, we'd also recommend a replacement of your oil boiler with a propane-fired boiler. The oil boiler is also from 1995, so it's at the end of its life. The pumps associated with are newer, so we recommend keeping them. The condensing propane boiler basically is a more efficient boiler. It allows for better turn down. It also allows for heating at low temperatures, so you don't have to rely on 160, 180 degrees with oil. You could heat at 120 degrees, which is, again, really helpful for shoulder seasons when it's, maybe 40 degrees in the morning and 70 degrees in the afternoon. You don't need 160 degree water. You just need a little bit to, take a little bit of the temperature off. So to go with that, you already have propane tanks on site that serve the generator. They're actually to the left of where that picture's taken. So our plan would basically be to tie into that system and just expand upon that. So we've worked with your current propane propane supplier for that in terms of the connection to those systems. And then the oil tank itself for this building, and actually, I didn't mention it at Circuit Corp, those would be, at this building, this oil tank is located above the pavement, or below the pavement, directly next to that car at the edge of the picture. So we recommend we drain that, fill that, and so it'll have all the DEP required testing, any of that that needs to be done to basically take it off the books. And that the reason why we recommend that just being filled and abandoned in place is just for less disturbance of that area, because it is a parking lot. And then the circuit court is a smaller tank that's located below grade in the grass area. So that one we're recommending actual removal, and then, backfill and reseeding that area. Does that kind of make sense for that building?
You good, Sheriff?
Why don't we allow this? Yeah.
I think they could accidentally knock that down when they're taking out the equipment.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what that fence serves. I don't really know what purpose that serves, because you have a much newer fence that surrounds the whole area. So I think that probably could go. Okay. Okay. Well, it's doing a great job.
We call that wisdom.
Yeah.
Age. Wisdom. Called the wisdom.
Well, if no questions, we'll continue on to some other options. Mike will kind of go
Were you
through.
taking or not taking? I was just there. I can't.
Thank you. Chris, you'll go through. Sorry.
So 2 items that we don't have pricing for, but have pending because we are new into the development of them. One is circuit court security upgrades. So we did a more concentrated walkthrough with Jay just last week so that we could get an idea through the walking floor plan exactly what the security updates will entail. From a rough order of magnitude, we're talking about several audio-visual door intercom upgrades or placements. We are going to be doing some badge control, so you will have people that can use quick access card to get into the door whenever we have security around. We will add some clerk windows in the interior so that they can be better served by clients. And there will be 1 or 2 wall and door additions added inside the building. We'll also have monitoring and video for specific doors and remote access control for specific doors and areas as well. This is not the best visual, but there's a lot to come, and as we continue to evolve the development and get more clear in terms of what this will look like, I can provide more detailed pictures that actually better paint the picture of the upgrades that we'll be doing. But in all, this will give the circuit court a much greater level of security throughout the building, throughout several measures that will help the clerk, help the ladies that work there, help the judges, and help the security guys both at the elevator entrance, the first floor entrance, and navigating throughout the building to make sure that your people, places, and things are secure. Any questions on what we have thus far for your security updates?
This is much needed, so thank you for that.
Our pleasure. Again, keep the judges happy. So this is our marching orders. We are in hot pursuit of getting those pricing and the developments for you so that hopefully by May I have more concentrated information for you along with the numbers that we have for the bulk of the items that we're talking about today. Our intention is to be able to execute this project along with the other project efforts that we're working on. So you were asking about cutting walls and doors. Yes, when it comes to the circuit court. And our idea or a hope is to be as efficient as we claim that we sure we are as our partnership to you. We want to be efficient, so if we're going to be working in the circuit court, let's do it all well, let's do it all at once so that we can have that building up and running for a long time.
Chrissy, a lot of the funding for these improvements will come from the savings, but I would think under the security upgrades, that's going to come.
It's a capital project that we're leveraging the efficiency of the scopes that we're doing that have the energy component. So it's really, we have the prowess and the means to be able to accomplish this while we're working on those energy efficiency projects. So this doesn't have an energy save grab a part of it, but it can leverage those energy savings from the other scopes into the bigger bundle. So it won't be as big a sticker shock as it would otherwise be.
And my county administrator knows I'm gonna ask the question about grants. I mean, is this something that we can also work grants if they're available to help, especially with a security upgrade versus maybe some of the energy effects?
100%, and there are a couple out there right now that are very applicable to what we're working on, so, I
We'd
believe
like
it's
to hear.
Kyle that we're having all that information sourced so that we can help the application. And part of my role, our role is any technical scopes that we can help provide, that help them apply, to help you get it, we're there for you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions when it comes to circuit court security? Okay, one more very complimentary effort that we're working on for the circuit court are also the windows. We have outdated older windows that are in definite need of, or single pane windows that are in definite need of upgrade at the same time. This does have an energy savings component to it, but we will be going through and getting pricing for a full upgrade of these windows so that you are set for a very long time for this building as a whole. Any questions on what we plan to do with the windows portion of the circuit court? Okay, just know we're working on it. It is very much a rush priority for us so that when I come back in May, I want to be able to provide more concrete information for you, paint the full picture. So working on it quickly for you so that we can bring everything up to the same construction period as everything else that we're talking about. So as a whole, with the main core components of the projects that we discussed and that my technical gurus have been able to elaborate on, the electrical upgrades, the lighting upgrades, the panel pieces that go along with it that have an energy savings big contribution factor along with the costs. Then for building envelope, same factor, minimal cost outlay, maximum savings potential for you throughout all buildings of the county that we have scopes for. And then last but not least that we have is the holistic HVAC upgrades, the VRF systems for the circuit court, as well as the sheriff's office district court that we talked about. Energy savings components in addition to the cost structure. You can see if we did the capital improvements just as they are, it would be roughly 2.7 million. But you have 20-year savings that we can leverage from those wasted utility dollars. Thank you, Mr. Magruder. And so your total project costs after everything is said and done are only 1.59 million. So we're leveraging those avoided utility and maintenance costs to help these improvements. Things that I did not keep in this slide, but want to make very certain and clear. This does have all costs are turnkey, all include design and construction and commissioning and training. And just want to make sure that that is well known, that these are fully baked numbers that include everything. These are firm fixed once we go to contract with you. And the goal is giving you guaranteed savings, guaranteed performance and results. You saw that 1.59 million that I just mentioned. We can use different funding and financing options. We just talked about grant programs available. And there is, in addition to security grants, there are utility rebates, especially with the VAV upgrades that we can use. And in addition to security grants that are available, there is the block grants that are available for the HVAC upgrades as well, that we can capture. So we'll be trying to navigate that as we walk through navigating the application system for that. The goal really with grants is we apply for them, we move forward with the project, you get awarded the grant, they're just in reimbursement back into your general fund. In addition to funding programs, you also can leverage, now we've talked about the solar PPA, schools are using it, we just haven't found that perfect facility to provide solar for the county just yet, but I know it will come. We also have the tax exempt municipal lease, and then we have bonds available. You can use the bonds for financing these projects as well. For what it's worth, I think the schools are looking at the options for the TELP for their projects, but your decision, your discretion on if you want to and how you'd want to finance the projects as well as using the funding that we can bring to the table for you. Any questions on this piece?
Is it too early to talk about timelines?
Not at all.
Because this is going to transcend more than one budget year for us, I would expect as well. I don't
Are
know.
we thinking construction for summer 2026?
We would start, so more specifically, at least on the lighting and the building envelope side, because we're already in the process of starting construction here shortly at the schools for at least those two items. If you would decide to move forward and approve a project, we would most likely look to just carry at least those two scopes in and have them just keep working right on in to the county while they're already here, and just allow them to keep kind of working through. The items, I would say more along the lines of maybe the window upgrades, the HVAC, they might lag a little bit later into the summer or maybe into the fall, depending on equipment lead times. You know, some of that stuff sometimes, like even windows, depending on if there's special custom order or HVAC equipment, you could be looking at, 16-week lead times, 10 to 16 weeks. So sometimes that will end up pushing us back out more so. But I would say you could expect lighting and building envelope to happen relatively quickly after you would approve. The other items would probably lag a little bit later into the year, which would probably be your next budget cycle.
So to your point, yes. And obviously, when we're talking about the circuit court, we want to be very mindful of occupancy hours and shifts and managing that, so that very well, we could be transcending into the different budget year. So once we approve and we say, let's move forward on this project, what good things happen? We replace the aged HVAC within the next 12 months. Thank you, Mike. That was a perfect segue. We will have an improved circuit court security, comfort, and reliability of your system's performance, and happy judges. We will have reduced emergency maintenance calls. You're welcome, Jay. And we will have predicted energy costs and results and performance and guaranteed savings from us as your long-term facility and capital improvement partner. As I've mentioned a couple of times, my goal and intention is we have a lot of work to do so that when I come back to you in May, our hope is to ask for approval so that we can move forward into final design and contracts and constructions and get started for you on making these improvements. Any updates that I have in terms of our projects in development and pending, I will be surfacing with Rob in April so that we can be very good to go come May. But any questions on this timeline and next steps? Okay. Just a confirmation as to your benefits and why you picked us. With us, you do have guaranteed outcomes. You have a single point of accountability with all of the scopes that we've mentioned. We are the project manager for all. So we will be leveraging, and we will be the make sure that all things that we take care of, you have one point of contact for, and you have, again, those guaranteed results and those outcomes. You have measurable, guaranteed, findable results that we can celebrate year over year. With that, our presentation's at conclusion. If you have any other questions for us, we are here for you.
With the HVAC, is that all looking at train equipment?
It's a mix of, it'll be train equipment in the district court, that's what's there now. So it'll be a replacement of that equipment, that's what we're recommending there. The boilers we're recommending over there, train's now boiler. We're recommending Lock and Bar, which is a partner that we've worked with a lot and had a lot of success with. In terms of the circuit court, we're primarily looking at Mitsubishi as the VRF partner.
Now, is there a reason, and maybe there is, maybe it's cost, but since we have service contracts with Train, I know we had some meetings with Train to say, we've already got a service contract with them to maintain the equipment on an ongoing basis. Would we also have to have a maintenance agreement with Mitsubishi, or would that be something that, who would take care of the maintenance on that?
I think they have the ability, Train does have a partnership with Mitsubishi, so I think they would have
Okay.
the ability to maintain. Yeah, I mean, so as part of these projects in general, we certainly look over the 20-year life of this. We want to make sure that it's properly maintained. So that's part of what, how we kind of choose the partners we work with in terms of making sure they're going to have long-term maintenance. It'll be a reliable solution.
We've been in regular contact with Travis to make sure that what items should be maintained, trained, and under their guise are maintained to continue in that fashion.
Do the estimates that you gave us include the cost of these maintenance agreements? I would assume not.
No, the maintenance agreements normally is a separate item. I think
Okay.
right now you have maintenance through another vendor. So as it stands right now, you would continue to have maintenance through them. So we did not include that in our current pricing structure.
I would say that the county should find out what those estimated costs would be, because that's gonna be a draw on our budget in the future as well, and we need to account for that, just simple as that. And the other question is, what do you anticipate, using local labor and/or local suppliers? What percentage of this project do you think will use that? I'm not gonna hold you to the exact number, but I'm gonna hold you to a range. So, are we talking 10%? We talking 50%? Local suppliers, local contractors, or are we talking zero?
Admittedly, so propane, we're working with your current propane provider.
Right.
A oil tank remover, we're working with a provider from the Richmond area. And then GC, we're also working with a provider from the Richmond area, so everyone's kind of in a mile radius. In terms of mechanical partners with us, we're working with one as well, just a little bit north from King George, Virginia.
I'm just trying to encourage as much local as possible, please. I mean, I understand, you know, we may not have the expertise for this, and I totally understand that. You need to bring that in, but the more we use local, the better for our little leagues and our bands and all that kind of stuff, because they put that money right back into the community,
Oh,
so.
you didn't hear McClure's gonna start sponsoring the Little League and the youth football and the fireworks?
Yep.
That's what I heard somewhere in the presentation.
You guys
I'm not sure
are
where I picked up
awesome,
on that.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Akers.
Putting words in our mouth.
Board members, any other questions? No, great. Thank you guys. Look forward to
Thank you
seeing you
very
back next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Brian, the request for changes for the zoning district classification.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know I like paper. I like trees.
And John's gonna tell you he
We've
loves
got
it too.
26 pages in this booklet here, so.
This was awesome, thank you.
Yeah, you gotta keep the price of pine pulpwood as high as possible.
That's too good right now.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Before I tell you about the rezoning, the first sheet there on what you're being handed has just the 3 items for work session, real quick, for me to go over. The next page is the items that need to be heard for public hearing. The reason why the comp plan part drops off is because the planning commission is kind of going section by section. They'll give you the comp plan in total for public hearing at the end. That gives the planning commission the ability to reach back into a section and maybe amend it before you get the final. And as y'all know, the world is changing so fast, we've already realized that some things that we put in are already obsolete. The third little sheet there is just the upcoming items, just for your information, for planning commission public hearings that are coming up with an approximate date on those dockets. We are extremely, extremely busy right now. That said, I'll show you really quickly the McKinley Properties LLC rezoning that just recently occurred with the Planning Commission. That's quite simply a rezoning from B1 to R3. This property is located, hopefully you haven't had to go to urgent care recently, but if you ever had to, when you're standing in the cul-de-sac, urgent care is kind of on top of the hill to your left. This property is to the right. Actually, it's 2 properties together that are owned by McKinley Properties. Mr. McKinley expressed to the Planning Commission that he's owned these properties for quite a long time, well over 20 years. He's been marketing them at the B1 zoning, and they just they've never sold. He, as you know, is a home builder, so he came to us over a year ago and began discussing what to do. And I said, well, you can't build single-family dwellings in a B1. You'd have to rezone it. It is technically a downzoning, but the Planning Commission still needs to weigh it with the comp plan and look at, you're losing some B1 zoning in a place that's kind of strategically located for a good B1 site. He said, If it was a great B1 site, it would have sold already, so. So that was the argument made by the applicant to the planning commission, and as you see, I provided the minutes from that planning commission meeting. The planning commission concurred, so it is coming to you for public hearing with a recommendation of approval. There was some protest, that is in the minutes there. Kelly nicely put the protest letter there. What occurred with that is the protestants were concerned about multifamily housing. They were concerned about kind of losing control of the neighborhood, if you will. And you can see from the site plan, the proposed road to serve these 5 lots would also go over to Black Gum Court where the protestants lived. At that time, staff advised Mr. McKinley, we cannot tell you to proffer something, but oftentimes proffers help alleviate concerns. That's what proffers are supposed to do. So Mr. McKinley is bringing you this request with a proffer that they will only be 5 single-family residents. At no time would they ever be multifamily in any way, shape, or form. So with that, most of the people who had an objection said no problem. I don't know what will happen when it comes to you on the board level. Of course, they get re-notified and things go on, so we'll see what happens. But it is coming to you with that one single proffer. I don't anticipate any changes to that proffer or additional proffers. This is not a VDOT road. Hospital Road is VDOT. The cul-de-sac is not. So this will be a private road. He's gonna have to have some kind of HOA agreement at final plat to serve that road. Are there any questions on this rezoning?
Brian, on page 3, you, the last paragraph, you said there are no proffers to consider, but the last page, as you just mentioned, there were proffers
Yes.
about the 5 residences and, what was the other one? I guess, well, 5 total single-family residences. And so I'm confused, and this was dated, I think, a day after McKinley Builders, McKinley Properties brought the proffers in. So is there some confusion there on what we call proffers and not?
No, there's no confusion. The memo was drafted prior to him actually getting us to it, to getting it to us.
Okay.
And, yeah, that was a very late stage proffer that came in.
Yeah, okay, I
They
see the
kinda
memo was
crossed
dated
in the
February
mail.
26th
Yep.
for the meeting on March the 3rd.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I dated, the memo was drafted on February 26th,
Gotcha.
they kind of crossed in the mail.
Okay, no problem, all right.
My goal is always to have the memo into the planning commissioner's hands a week prior, or definitely the business week prior to the week of the meeting. Does not always occur, but in this case, he was kind of mulling the idea of a proffer, but it happened after this went to print.
So the planning commission's recommendation came after the proffer introduction?
Yes, indeed, yeah. I think without that proffer, I do not think you would have had a unanimous recommendation for approval. It probably still would have found favorable consideration, but I don't think it would have been unanimous.
And those proffers are binding to this rezoning? They can't change
Correct.
it later, nobody can change that later? And if they decide to sell the lots, that goes with, that proffer continues with that
Yes, sir.
rezoning?
Yeah, if he
Okay.
decides to sell it to somebody else the day after the ink dries on a board decision, that is gonna run with the land.
It's a deed restriction.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I believe there are a lot of uses that he could put on that as a business that may not be conducive to the neighborhood there, that by going residential, it really matches up nicely with the adjacent neighbors. Is that correct?
I think that's a true statement.
Okay.
We did have that conversation with a few of the adjacent property owners privately when they expressed concern. And, really, one of the by right uses is, for instance, a Wawa or
Exactly.
something like that.
That's what I
I
thought,
would
as a business.
much rather live next to a few houses than a Wawa. Nothing against Wawa. Wawa's
understand.
great, but
Convenience center,
I
we
don't want to live
understand.
next to one.
sewer and water, town sewer and water currently goes to those other operations, one on Hospital Road and one at the end of that cul-de-sac there. Is that correct?
That's correct,
And I
yeah.
know their intention is to hook up to that.
Yes,
Okay, and that'll be their responsibility, working that with the town, et cetera.
That's correct.
Now, will that go with the rezoning as well? I don't think the lots are big enough anyway to do sewer and water, so they really don't have a choice, so,
Yes.
okay.
yeah, the lot geometry that he depicts there would be impossible with private well and septic.
And does VDOT have to approve the connection to Black Gum?
Black
How does
Gum
that
is
work?
private.
I thought
So-
Black Gum was or a public road.
I think Black Gum is a county named road. I don't think it's VDOT.
Okay.
I will double check on that.
How can they connect into that?
Good question.
I mean,
It's depicted on the site plan that way. There may be a civil, I do not know, for instance, if these two parcels have the right to connect to that right of way, if you know what I mean. That does occur sometimes
and
where.
the only reason I bring it up is the fact, I'm just thinking about emergency services.
Mhm.
If you've got a fire on lot number 3, I'm looking on page 12, Chuck, if you wanna open up that, file, page 12, so everybody's on the same page. It's the drawing, the site drawing. Keep going. Pass those pictures. That's it, right there. And you'll have to turn that. But, I'm just, how is a fire truck, if they can't access Black Gum, how is a fire truck going to access Lot 3 and turn around and come back? Lot 4 for that matter, any of those lots in there.
As you know, when we discuss lot geometry, road geometry with developers, that's a huge consideration. We always want, as you just illustrated, emergency vehicles, if they can do a flow-through, if tankers need to come to bring extra water to a fire, they don't have to turn around. When you leave that cul-de-sac there, going up, that's gonna be quite a grade.
That's another issue I wanted to,
Yeah.
you got a wall there right now. And,
You do.
but I assume that can be mitigated through paving or whatever. And is that what that road's going to be, as a paved road? It doesn't have to be as a private road, I
Correct.
understand that, but I would be concerned that if not paved, it would wash into that cul-de-sac. Because that's a
That
steep
could be a
grade there.
problem, yes,
I mean,
that could be a problem.
If you know the geometry there, that is the old Rappahannock Riverbank from millions of years ago. It's a steep slope there,
It is.
so.
It's a very steep slope. And as you know, the zoning ordinance has road standards even for private roads, 12 feet wide, 6 inches depth, et cetera, et cetera. But that still might not protect it from erosion, so that's gonna be a concern.
By the drawing, it looks like it's a big enough road in there. So,
Yes, yeah.
By the
It's-
drawing, and if they can connect to
Shows
Black
50
Gum,
foot.
the EMS, it solves that problem immediately, which is, again, no problem. I think it's a great use for what they're talking about here. I just wanna make sure that, we don't have a problem develop later on. And the other question is drainage. I know that was one of the issues of the public that came that day, is the drainage of those lots. I guess that will come as part of the site plan. But that would be a concern.
Yes.
A resident concern. We don't want to dump that on somebody else's property or have an erosion problem.
There's gonna be a lot of stormwater management on this.
Oh, a great deal, yeah. To build the road, the main road plan and all is definitely gonna have to have a state stormwater permit
Okay.
and a stormwater plan. And like you're exactly right, the slope is the biggest challenge, as well as the sandy soil. The soil underneath the ground there is extremely gravelly and sandy. It doesn't hold well in a major rain event.
I mean, it's all doable.
Yeah.
They just need to dot their i's, cross their t's, but, anyway, if you'll look into that Black Gum connection, which, don't get me wrong, I think it's a great idea, it would be awesome. But I thought Black Gum was state, but I could be wrong.
The consultant for the applicant has indicated emphatically that they have proper right to access Black Gum, but we'll follow up on that, try to have that ready for you.
That's fine, that's good. I'm glad they do. But generally, looking at it, it's a great idea for that piece of property. You know, just a few issues that we just gotta make sure we dot our i's, cross our t's to protect the residents that'll live there as well as the adjacent, you know, residents.
In a global matter, we're losing a little bit of B1. Any impact you see globally for the county, because we've lost that 2-point-something acres?
It's probably not a huge opportunity lost, given that it's been marketed for so long and there's not been a business that's wanted to locate up there. Tax-wise, I'm probably not the person to answer the difference in tax that you garner, but of course, being that it's undeveloped now, and if it continues to remain vacant, the tax that you're garnering from it is, you know, not negligible, but something above that.
Well, we have other B1 property that's marketed, it's
Sure.
not selling either.
Yeah, indeed. That's a good question. I can check. I know there's good opportunity zone north of here and along Airport Road. I don't remember if it stretches that far south. It's another good question to have answered for your hearing.
And the potential with the private road there, if they build state highway standards, as well as that road going to the cul-de-sac there currently, can get into VDOT system, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I would hope. That would
I
be-
have, it's no secret, I've pushed them in that direction. Quite selfishly, from a staff perspective, staff would always prefer to see any new development be a VDOT right of way, because it just does so much to eliminate use conflicts in the future. Often those use conflicts in neighborhoods over roads end up taking a lot of staff time away over, they're not maintaining the road and it's a constant battle. When it's a good, properly made VDOT road, it's easier for emergency services to get in and out, and it's a lot less headache for staff in the future when the road falls into disrepair.
Now, is his intent to actually build homes on that, or is it to sell those properties as residential property?
He's expressed that his intent is to build spec homes himself and then sell them. Just from anecdotal experience in the office day in and day out, spec homes right now in Essex, especially of the size that he's talking about, that kind of sweet spot, 1,200 square feet to 1,500, 1,400, they sell right after the footers are poured. They're selling very quickly. I don't know how or whatever, that's for somebody else to answer, but spec homes of that size seem to do very well here. You have a lot of people who live here who might be looking for that starter home or that smaller, that exact size.
So these are gonna be single-family homes, just separate, it's not gonna be a duplex?
No duplex, no triplex, no connection, no townhomes. These are standalone, single-family homes on each little lot.
They're gonna be awful close together still, there might well be a duplex.
I told him he should talk to the hospital about traveling nurses and needing places to stay when, a traveling nurse is coming through, and a lot of people do, a 6-week or whatever tour duty in a hospital. You could walk to work from there, so.
Yeah, he's probably thought of that, don't you think?
Looking, Brian, at the VDOT map, it shows Black Gum Road, but doesn't have a number to it.
Okay,
Although not every road's got numbers on their maps anyway, but, so
Okay.
it's a good chance that it is a state highway.
okay, I'll look
But
into that.
just
Carlos and I
double-check
have
that.
some resources I'll check and make sure.
Just again, from the safety
Yeah.
point, if we're gonna get fire trucks in there or EMS units, they gotta have a place either to go through or turn around.
All right.
you anticipate us seeing this next month
Um,
to vote?
if, that's up to you guys. I'm not the
Is it on the
decider
agenda
on that.
tonight?
No, it's not on the
Okay.
agenda tonight. It'll go to public hearing for next month unless you guys
That's fine.
direct us
That's
differently.
fine. Okay. I was just getting the timeline.
Do they have any kind of site work, preliminary site work done on what they plan to do with the runoff?
I have not seen any of that yet. Being that he's got an engineer handling even this part of it for him, he's indicated that he's done some soil boring and some initial work in that regard. The thing that you hear a lot nowadays is everybody, no one wants to spend that money yet until they know whether they have an up or down nod, so.
It's fair enough.
It's always that blurry line between the decisions we have to make and you have to make. But there's always those unknowns that once the site work starts, there may be other challenges. Shrink swell
given-
soils, things like that.
Given the grade of the lots, I just cannot see how they're gonna get the water off there without doing some significant damage to the surrounding property downhill.
It is, if you go up there, it's very, very high relief. It's one of the highest elevation points in that whole, you know.
That's why
probably
they call Mount Clement, Mount Clement.
This is the top of Mount Clement. Yep, indeed.
Board members, any other questions for Brian on that? Guess we can go into the next one, Brian, the ordinance amendment?
Yes, yeah, indeed. So the next item that the planning commission took up, and you'll, Ronnie, you're gonna notice the date on this memo is, yeah, it is indeed October 30th, 2025.
I wasn't gonna say anything about that.
I knew you'd be the one to notice that. So this began hearing in November of last year. We had, for a couple months, staff had worked with the planning commission on the cell tower ordinance. Communication towers, it's called, but essentially it's generally dealing with cellular towers. We had several people come to us the last couple years talking about there's still some dead zones in the county. Verizon's still out there, and Verizon has kind of developers who look for that, and they'll try to locate strategic tower locations. They are the ones who noticed our height, and the ordinance was capped at 125 feet. Given, this isn't the Piedmont, but as you know, Essex County has lots of trees and lots of hills. Most of the Verizon people told us, hey, we can't put any new towers here with this height restriction. It's just not gonna work. We're not gonna get the distance we need. And I said, okay. So we started talking with other counties nearby who have higher heights, and worked with the planning commission on that. This went to public hearing in November. It stalled a little bit. The commissioners didn't like some of the language, and that's why you see two different colors in the, when you look in a couple pages, you see some yellows and some greens. That was stuff that I put in there just to help the planning commission, as we amended month by month, to go back and keep track of what we were doing. I'll hit the highlights. The main thing is on page 1 of the final edit version. You see, instead of 125-foot height, you see 200 feet, period. Quote, a higher height may only be approved by the Board of Supervisors in conditional use permit process. That is just to address the fact that Middlesex has, I want to say it's 300 feet. The commissioners really didn't want to have that in here as part of a, they wanted to be able to give you guys the ability, if there's a compelling reason for a tower to be 250, for instance, you could do that, but it would be a case-by-case basis. But any developer would look at this and know he's talking about 199 feet. 199 feet is kind of the sweet spot, because that keeps you under the FAA limit for lighting. So there are compelling reasons why some towers might be much higher. I doubt you'll see any more of those. They just cost too much, and I think the cell companies are just trying to hit those last little dead zones now, at least from what we've been told. The other change is page 2. you see in the yellow highlight there, number 3, quote, unless approved by the Board of Supervisors in conditional use process. That's an item that we discovered. There was a previous restriction that, that did not allow a cell tower to be between a principal structure and the street. That sounds like a great idea in Loudoun County. On a 300-acre Essex County farm, the main dwelling may be 2,000 feet back off the road. The cell tower may need to be 1,000 feet from the road, still way back off the road, but it would technically not be possible to do that unless you had that little sentence in there. The other changes on page 3 involve bonding. This is what took so long. This is what took months and months. The commissioners were very concerned that our previous bonding the language was very out of date and wasn't strong enough to prevent a problem with a tower that had an issue or construction that went awry. So a lot of that language you see there, we won't go through it now, you can read it at your own leisure, but it borrows heavily from the language that's used in the solar energy sites bond language. It also takes away the power of the zoning administrator to extend time and things like that, and puts the power for that back in the hands of the Board of Supervisors and the county attorney. We felt that was more appropriate. Zoning administrators come and go. We felt like the county attorney and the board having the ability to manipulate that bond as they needed was much better than that being a staff act, if you will. The
So is this
last,
something that's coming up that you want the board to have a public hearing on in the future? So we'll probably
Correct,
need to get
yeah.
this over to the county attorney
so,
to review
yes, yep.
before we go to public hearing?
So those were the main changes, 200 feet and some bond language changes. I think it might have come through on your copy. There's a shall insert in there that was at the hearing itself. So hopefully that's okay with Max, but they insisted that may be a shall at the last minute.
You ready for me, Brian?
I am, yeah.
You were talking about the bond. It's a 5-year bond, and then it gets updated.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that the way costs are changing so rapidly and things like that, can that be bumped down to 3 years instead of 5? Do you see a big problem? Would the planning commission see a big problem?
From a staff standpoint, I do not. I don't know, from a county attorney standpoint, that would be Max's call on that, but
I would look.
that's making it a little bit stricter than what it was before, but that may be something that's within the realm of
Again, it just
possibility.
seems to me that if you're gonna post a bond 5 years from now and they abandon that just costs are escalating much more rapidly than maybe we're used to. In a 5-year bond, we're gonna find out that they're gonna walk because there's not enough money in the bond and no big deal. I just, think a 3-year might be a little bit better, just a food for thought on that one.
Okay.
Currently, and this is on page 4 under number H, we're allowing 3 additional users to the tower. Should we increase that a few more? If they're gonna add more height to it, I think there's gonna be some benefits, because I'm assuming that the additional height is gonna have EMS benefits. I'll look at Kyle and Wes over there, that's a good assumption. Taller the tower, the more connection we're gonna have and all that. So I would assume, number 1, that EMS will have the same rights that they had before. That's not gonna change. But I didn't know if, additional users. We now have a pretty good network going on with the adjacent counties. I don't know, is that a big, no-go, or can we say 5 instead of, or as many as practical that don't interfere, whatever, so.
I think that's a great idea. A case could be made that once you have the impact of the tower, adding more users so there's not more impact is not.
Why is there a limitation?
Yeah, I don't know why.
There are a number of statutory restrictions that exist. So
The
we
heck
might-
with them, no.
Hey, you're not gonna get any argument from me. So we might need to examine
I understand.
the amendments in the context of some of those changes that came through in the last
fine.
few years.
That's why we have a county attorney. Kyle, we're good with?
Yeah, it's usually based on the weight of the equipment at the tower.
Okay,
That's usually what restricts any more users.
okay. Well, tell them to build it stronger. With that, Brian, are we talking about them increasing the current towers, or would they take down the old towers and actually construct a new tower of 200 feet? Because does it have to be wider? I don't know the engineering part of that.
The discussions Lauren and I have had with developers, Verizon developers, have been about completely new constructions in new locations.
In new locations. It would not be increasing the current locations.
Mm-hmm.
It possibly could be.
It's possible,
Okay.
but the main driver that brought this issue to light has been at least one and possibly a second location that was needed in the county to fill gaps where there's dead or weak zones. You know, where you, kind of place where
Absolutely.
you might only have one or two bars and they're wanting to fill them in.
Understand that completely.
So new construction, but there's nothing, like you indicated, there would be nothing to stop somebody from coming back and wanting to build. But,
They'd have to come back and.
They would have to
do a
come
new
back.
Permit and
Yep.
everything else. and
new permit process.
Most likely, it's not gonna be cost-effective to do that, to go up additional.
The only
75
exception
feet.
would be in footprint, exact same height, et cetera, that might.
Yeah.
The problem there has been county records going back to when some of these towers were initially built. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it's literally one page of an application and we don't have a good indication of what was permitted and what height and things like that, so.
And I think you answered the question about lighting. As long as they stay under 200 feet, they don't have to have any lighting on
Correct.
that?
You'll see some have a couple markers on them, but the really obtrusive strobes and stuff that you see, when you get below 199, those are no longer
Required.
required.
Okay. And the last thing, I know that, the state has allowed counties, some kind of fees and that kind of stuff for solar facilities and all that kind of stuff. Other than the fee for the zoning permit or whatever like that, I don't see any additional benefit other than the EMS being able to use it, or fire, or whoever. Is there precedence or other counties charging additional fees for these extra higher
I
towers or
do
whatever?
know there's a statutory limit to some of that. Maybe Max is better apprised on that
And
than I am.
if you don't have the
There's-
answer now, it's fine, just
Yeah.
make a note of that, and I'd just be curious to see.
At the
you
last
know.
planning commission meeting, when we were discussing, I give them kind of a dashboard view of what's coming in the next month or two also, and I talked to them about the fee updates and things going on. Immediately, one of the planning commissioners referred back to this, and he said, oh, by the way, I think the cell tower permit fee should probably be increased, because it's pretty out of date. It's based on,
That's what I thought, just want to
Yeah.
make sure that we are compensated correctly, or the maximum that we're allowed
yes,
to.
a cell tower permit, building permit, is usually pretty significant in my experience.
Considering what we pay in monthly fees, I think they can afford a few extra pennies our way. Just saying. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anyone else have any questions on this? Hey, Brian, all right, comprehensive plan update.
Okay, comprehensive plan, hopefully you were able to, or will be able to, at your leisure, look at the story map for section 6. The story map is kind of neat because it just amplifies the comp plan document. A lot of credit has to go to Carlos and Tim for what you see when you look at that. They spent many, many months, especially Tim, putting in all the VDOT data and working with VDOT staff to make sure that our numbers were correct. The great thing, I don't know if Bud's not here, but Bud has, for many years, as you all know, talked about the flooded roads, things like that in the county, and concerns about some of those riverfront roads that flood frequently. We've got those mapped in that section. I can't remember what page it is. There's a lot of other updated maps. It's a pretty good chapter. We're really proud of it. The planning commission spent a long time working on this one. So that's, VDOT has approved it. VDOT, we kind of had to get it to where the planning commission liked it. You have to send it to VDOT, VDOT approves it, and then you take it back to the planning commission for approval. So that's all been done with what you see there. As you look at that, when that comes, before that comes to you, if something remarkable changes with regard to transportation infrastructure in the county, we'll adjust it and have another hearing before you get it. But for the most part, this is much better than what we had before regarding transportation.
Board members, any questions on that?
Looking forward to it.
Okay, and like I said, that last item with the comp plan does not need to come back to you in public hearing yet. That'll be, if Tim were here, he would kick me and say, we're trying to get it done in the next year, and reality, it's gonna take a little longer than that to finish all the chapters of the comp plan.
The key, it's done well.
Yeah. The only other update I had for you with regard to that subject was the smart scale applications did go in. I do not have a presentation for you on that tonight. Part of the reason for that is that's just kind of the initial pre-application. We felt like it would be more prudent to let VDOT staff look at that, and in a month or two, if they give us an indication on those applications going to round 2, then we'll update you on those. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. All right, board members, with that, could somebody read us into closed session?
I move that the Essex County Board of Supervisors convene in closed meeting pursuant to Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711A3 for the discussion and/or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose and the disposition of public held real property where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy of the board related to leases and use agreements, potential property acquisition, and sites for public facilities, and pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A8 for consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, including related to agreements, real estate transactions, contracts, and litigation.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're in closed session. Yeah, I am. All right, can I get somebody to motion to come back into open session?
So move.
Second.
Moved and properly second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Somebody read the compliance certification, please. All right, April, you do a roll call, sorry.
Chairman Akers.
Present?
Vice Chairman Gill.
Present.
Supervisor Hale.
Present.
Supervisor Henry.
Present.
Supervisor Magruder.
Present.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Somebody read the compliance certification, please.
Yes, whereas the Essex County Board of Supervisors has convened a closed session on this date pursuant to an affirmation recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the board that such closed session was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, there be it resolved that the board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirement of Virginia law were discussed in closed session, to which the certification resolution applies, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the board.
Thank you. Any member who believes there was a departure from the requirements of clauses 1 and 2 shall state the substance of the departure that in his judgment has taken place. Hearing none, April, will you please certify the board members?
Chairman Akers.
I certify.
Vice Chairman Gill.
I certify.
Supervisor Hale.
I certify.
Supervisor Henry.
I certify.
Supervisor Magruder.
I certify.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn our work session?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. We'll restart in 7